Hi friends, today we are going to learn about MVC application lifecycle. The MVC Model View Controller Application Lifecycle refers to the series of steps or stages through which an ASP.NET MVC application goes when handling an HTTP request. These stages allow the framework to process the request, interact with models, update the view, and return a response to the client. The typical MVC application lifecycle can be divided into several key phases. The first point is request handling, we call it as a routing. When a user makes a request, for example, by navigating to a URL, ASP.NET MVC first determines which controller and action method should handle the request. Routing. Routing is the process of matching the incoming request URL to route defined in the route config.cs file found in app start folder. Example route definition. This is the route definition. You can see here defaults. We have a controller name is home and action name is index id URL parameters no optional. So based on this route configuration, if a user navigates to slash home index, the framework knows to route the request to handle home controller first, then its index action method. The second part is routing to the controller. Once the correct route is identified, the ASP.NET MVC creates an instance of the controller specified in the route and invokes the appropriate action method of the controller. Example, if the route slash home slash index is matched, the index action of the home controller is called. See, here we have a home controller and inside there is a index action method. This is the example. Action method execution. The action method in the controller executes and performs its logic. This may include interacting with the model to fetch data or performing other business logic. The controller action can return different types of results. For example, view results renders a view, JSON results returns data in JSON format for AJAX calls. Redirect result redirects to another URL. File result returns a file to the client and other based on specific requirements. For example, you can see we have a action method name called index. In the index method, we are calling interacts with the model. See product service dot get all products. This is a model interaction, and in the return we are returning the products. Passes data to the view. And the fourth point is model interaction. If needed, the controller interacts with the model to retrieve or modify the data. The model represents the application's data and business logic. Example, retrieving data from database, processing information. The controller typically calls the methods on the model to get or update the data. See, here we have an example. This is a class product service and we have a get all products method. It returns list of products. See, here we are fetch products from the database. Here we are returning product list. And the next part is view rendering. After the action method executes, it returns a view result. The view is responsible for rendering the HTML that the client will see. It takes the data passed from the controller and use it to generate dynamic content. In ASP.NET MVC, views are usually written in Razor syntax. .cshtml file, which is used to embed server-side C# within HTML. Here, look at here, it's a CSHTML file. Here we have a model list. It contains product details. We have a header one, product list, and we are using for each to print the data. This is an example for view rendering. And sixth step is result execution. Once the view has been rendered, the result, usually HTML, is sent back to the client's browser. This final HTML is returned as HTTP response and the page is rendered on the user screen. And the seventh point is cleanup. After the response is sent back, ASP.NET MVC performs any necessary cleanup activities. This might involve disposing of objects, releasing resources, or handling any errors, exceptions that were raising during the process of the request. Now we'll see the detailed overview of the phases. Here is a step-by-step breakdown of the MVC application lifecycle. First point is request is received. A user navigates to URL in the browser. Let's look at here the example HTTP colon double slash localhost slash home index. Here this is a domain and it is home is a controller and index is an action. And the second phase is routing. The routing engine defines a route config.cs, matches the incoming URL to a controller and action method. It will match the URL to route pattern and extract the controller name, action, method name, and any parameters. And third step is controller initialization. The appropriate controller is instantiated. The fourth step is action method execution. The action method is invoked to handle the request. If necessary, it interacts with model. Example, fetching data from database and process any logic. Model interaction. If the action requires the data, the control calls the model to retrieve or process the data. View rendering. The action method returns a view result which invokes a view, typically as .cshtml file. The model data is processed to the view and the Rager generates the appropriate HTML markup. And the HTTP response. The generated HTML is sent back to the browsers as an HTTP response and the page is rendered for the user. And the last one is cleanup. Any cleanup process are executed after the response is sent, such as disposing of objects, closing database connections, or handling errors. So, MVC application lifecycle example. A user visits slash product and details, and this is, so this is a controller and this is a action and this is a parameter. The routing engine maps this to product controller and the details action. The product controller's details action is executed. The action interacts with the product model to fetch data for the product with ID 5. The controller returns a view that displays the product details. The view receives the model product data, renders the page in HTML. The HTML is returned to the user's browser. So friends, this is all about MVC application